G'day and welcome back to RC Model Reviews, not so weekly news for another not so week. And first of all, I have to thank the hundreds of people who have emailed me with words of support and encouragement and commiseration at the announcement I made at the end of last month. And I do appreciate that massive amount of support. Also, thank you to the much smaller number who actually made donations. I wasn't soliciting funds, but hey, it will go towards the travelling I've got to do this month before I tidy up my bench. And big thanks. Now, some people have also said, well, why haven't you, further commented on this issue? Why haven't you told us what's going on? Well, basically there is a third-party mediator involved now who is attempting to undertake some mediation between myself and Model Flying New Zealand. I have said, yes, I'm more than happy to engage. And Model Flying New Zealand have stated a similar intention on their forums. So I believe if you're going to be looking at mediation, you don't carry on litigating something in a public forum. You basically remain silent. And to be honest, my perspective on this is not to apportion blame, not to go over who did what and whatever to who. I think it's reached a point with this whole thing where it's time to draw a line in the sand and look at what common ground can be found and then move forward, because the hobby in this country the reputation of this hobby has taken a huge pounding in the wake of events that have transpired over the last 3 years. And it's time to realise that the hobby has to come first. And I'm keen to promote, support and encourage this hobby. And I'm sure Model Flying New Zealand are too. So I'm sure there's room there for common ground where we put aside any personal perspectives and just get on with the job of making sure that people can fly and enjoy the hobby safely and affordably. Let's see what happens. So I'm not saying anything else. I don't believe it is ethical or responsible to start, as I say, relitigating the past when you're looking at mediation as a possible solution. So there you go. That's all I've got to say about that. In the meantime, what's happened this week? Well, I did the video on the propeller tests and a few interesting points arose from that. One person posted a comment and they said, well, I've bent a motor shaft with these new super strong propellers. And yeah, well, that is always a possibility. The difficulty is that with the older props, when they broke or deformed, that absorbed a lot of the energy that might be involved in a crash or a collision with something. So that energy was spent deforming or breaking the propellers, wasn't actually passed on in total to the motor itself. Now, when we get these super strong propellers like the DAL 5045 bullnose and the Gemfan 5045 bullnose, they don't deform, they don't break nearly as easily. So in a fairly hard crash, a lot of the energy will actually be transmitted right through to the motor and primarily the motor shaft. That leaves us with a problem. The shafts themselves will bend or break if you apply enough force to them. And that's why in all of my recent mini quad builds, I've used 2204 motors rather than 1806, because if you look here, as you can see, the 1806 shaft, even on a high quality motor like this Tiger motor, the 1806 shaft is only 2 millimeters in diameter. That's kind of puny, really. On a 2204 motor, you get 3 millimeters of shaft, and that's an awful lot stronger. So even though the performance of the motors may not vary very much, the strength of the 2204s is almost always much higher than that of the 1806. So there's a small price difference, but I'm happy to pay that small price difference and know that I'm not going to nearly as easily bend a shaft and therefore have to replace the motor. So on my 1806 motors, I stick with either the DAL 5x4 unbreakables, which are quite flexible and do absorb a lot of impact, or the Gemfan 5453s, which will bend and break before they'll damage your motor shaft. On the 2204s, however, with their thicker shafts, I'm happy to use the DAL 5045 bullnose or the Gemfan 5045 bullnose or the HQ 5045 bullnose, because the shaft in the 2204 motors is much stronger. Now, another thing that arose during that set of tests is someone pointed out what happens when you're flying your mini quad at an angle, because the static test, the air comes in the front, goes out the back, just like when you're hovering. But when you're flying a mini quad at speed, it gets a lot of angle on it. It's actually sort of like this, so the air can come in at quite an angle to the propeller. What effect does that have on propeller performance and other aspects of flying? Well, this is an opportunity for me to talk about the P factor, and I've done a video on the P factor which describes exactly what happens when a propeller encounters an inclined airflow. And there's some really interesting things going on there. P factor is a bit misunderstood. It's one of those aerodynamic things, a bit of myth and folklore involved in it. So I'm going to try and dispel some of the myths and tell you the facts and why it's important, especially with fixed wing, and how it affects things like helicopters and multi-rotors and fixed wing. So we'll learn something there. Opportunity to tell you a bit more about the theory of flight. So yeah. Of course, what else have I been doing? Well, I've got all these builds on the bench. Man, this bench has never been messier. I've got the RC Timer hexacopters all ready to go, except for setting up the flight controller. And so as I say, CC3D, not my favourite flight controller, but we'll see how we get on. It's going to take a bit of time. And of course, my laptop also is an old coal-powered one, and I have to try and find a way to get the latest OpenPilot software on there because the network connector on my laptop has died, so frustrations, never mind. I've got the FlexiB frame all bar finished. I've got the Shen Drones frame with the angled motors at the back. I've got a whole lot of other stuff here, which is just, and the ZMR version 2 frame with the ESCs that FPV Models sent me for review. So there's so much stuff to do here, so little time, and unfortunately this time of the year, the weather is usually pretty variable. I mean, at the moment it's blowing a gale outside. It's going to rain tomorrow and the next day, and it's also pretty cold. Still got my thick jacket on. So I really have to schedule my time very carefully, and I don't want to leave it too late in the month because I may run out of days when I can even fly. And the whole goal of this, last month is to tidy these flight tests up. So it's going to be really dodgy because, of course, I also have to make sure I've got someone with a camera or to hold the camera. I've got to have someone who's going to do some spotting. So there's a lot of coordination involved there. So yeah, there's a lot of hours going in, starting early, finishing late, rendering into the wee small hours of the night, and before anyone asks, yes, including the UHF Part 2 videos. And of course, there's also the, Team Black Sheep, Crossfire. I've got to do that as well. There's just so much damn stuff to do. So instead of talking to you about it, I'd better get on and do it. So thank you for watching. As usual, questions, comments in the normal place, and I will be now getting back to the bench because I've got so much to do. Bye for now.